Our next speaker is actually one of the international speakers that, as an Israeli, I'm most excited about. I'm not going to make a long introduction, but not every day we have a speaker coming from your country, and I'm going to let Alper introduce himself. So, Alper, good luck, and welcome to Israel.
Thank you. So, we're good. Hello, my name is Alper. I'm from Turkey, as they mentioned. So, I went to BSIDES events in other countries. Usually, they are much less crowded. So, I bought the day before. So that's one of the other issues. We want to conduct a penetration test, but we have usually very limited time. This might be the biggest problems, one of my biggest problems. The IT guy knows everything because he once watched a YouTube video on how Nmap works, or he went to one of these CH courses, so he knows exactly what I'll be doing. And just to tell you how funny this is, in one engagement we were presenting the report to the IT director, and there was this security guy also who knew everything, who was CEH and certified, and cool guy. And we presented the report, and he said, yeah, but you forgot something. You missed a vulnerability. Oh, this is usually bad in my line of work if you miss a vulnerability. I said, I don't believe we do, but if you could just explain to us what we did wrong or what we missed, we would like to look into that. He said, okay, you conducted an internal assessment. We said yes. And you also tested our voice over IP, yes, with the phones and the server. Yes, but there was a denial of service vulnerability on our phones and you didn't report it. I said, yeah, we reported, we have a remote code execution on the report, but what does? You know, you could have just unplugged the phone, and so the phone wouldn't work, and so it would be denial of service, and you didn't include it in the report. And the IT director was coming from a software background. He said, yeah, please, you know, update the report, include that as well. So that's another problem we face, and maybe the second largest problem we face is, you know, we are usually not welcome. Where I come from, we have this thing called T. I don't know, anyone has been to Turkey for a holiday or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So when you enter anywhere, it could be a car dealer, a clothes shop, or just a regular meeting, they offer you tea, and you know, you usually accept it. And 7 out of 10 times, we as penetration testers don't even get offered tea, so they don't even ask us. So that's how they hate us. And you know, our biggest problem is that we are in the Middle East, and the customer usually, I suppose it's pretty similar with you, the customer pays or tries to pay for what he thinks we should be paid, not for what we do or, you know, our services. So the report, as one of my colleagues mentioned in the underground track, you know, has to be thick and has to look full, because, you know, that's how things work in Turkey. I suppose it could be similar here. So that leaves us with, and since most of the customers will have their MS17010 patched by now, that leaves us with everything else that is somehow connected to the network, and we are trying to do something with it. Our first and one of the largest vectors we have are printers. They are good for, you know, user enumeration and general scanning. By the way, for all of us who went through this CH or, you know, have watched this video on Nmap usually isn't a good idea in corporate networks, because they will probably have some sort of endpoint solution somewhere, and when you start the scan, the endpoint solution will have a pop-up saying that someone is scanning the network. What the end user will do is call the IT guy saying, are you doing something? I have this alert on my box. And the IT guy will say, okay, no worries, it's our guys, we are conducting a test. And during the final phase where we present to the CISO or the IT director, he will say, yeah, but our IT solutions found them, and, you know, we let them work because, you know, they were doing their job, otherwise we would have, you know, stopped them. So we try to do the most we can without alerting anyone or generating any alarms, even if it's a white box and internal test. And, you know, Nmap doesn't always work, so let's try how we are with demo gods today. I think I have something. So this is, just let me. Okay, perfect. So this is your average cracked unlicensed Windows 7. And what I will do, I will just, you know, use the recommended settings for the firewall, and I will just run a basic Nmap scan, and we will see that even with this, so bear with me here. Yes. Not really sure about the IP. Oops, that's not the right IP. Okay. The demo gods are okay. I'm stupid. Sorry about that. I will just put in the correct address. Okay. So we hope to see now that even with the most basic Windows firewall, Nmap won't give you any decent results whatsoever. So that's why we try to avoid using Nmap and mass scan or unicorn scan or any other port scanners you might be using. Okay, so all the ports are filtered. It doesn't help us that much. So printers, they present several attack vectors. The first one is that you can connect to them and at least have something to write in the report. Management screens are always good. This website, it has some default password. It doesn't have all of the default passwords, obviously, but defaultpasswords.com could be a way to start. If during an engagement you run on anything working on port 80 and that looks like a login screen, maybe they have default credentials, or you could just Google for default credentials as well. When you get access to a printer, even if it's not in the domain or if you can't get any credentials from it, you can always get some decent user names, at least to help you with later on with your brute force. The printer protocols and similar things where most of us probably have heard of a little malware called Stuxnet. You know that it was using printer protocols to scan the network and to try to find the targets. So there's an interesting toolkit that can still be developed that focuses on printers. So if you like to play on the idea, you can always use it. And just as I was preparing for this talk, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Tenable just published a blog post about how you can own a printer, and it turns out some HP printers do have a netcat installed on them, so they got a shell on the box using it. Unfortunately, I couldn't carry the printer with me, so you could just Google it. And at the end of my talk, I'll try to end up with something interesting, saying that everything old is new again. So everything that we used to have maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago with local file inclusion or code injection and similar things come back to us with as far as enterprise IoT is concerned. So here also, if you read the blog post, you will see that it starts with a path traversal. So they can just browse the directories, and then they find a way to upload a file and execute it after a reboot. So it's pretty straightforward. Routers, usually even the best, the most secure, quote-unquote banks, have at least one router they have on some network they use for tests, apparently, because every time I find something interesting in a well-protected network, the customer says, yeah, we know it's for a test, we will shut it off. So that's why I suppose usually these are test things. So the basic idea is, why should anyone reach any router or router, depending on which side of the pond you are? Well, I do have, in fact, a router here, and let's say that we are conducting a test, a very basic test, and we came across this login screen. So this is, it's an open source router you can use. So what would be our first instinct? Admin, that's right. It turns out, yes. It turns out that if you Google it, because zero shell, it might be the first time you hear it. If you Google it, the kind people put this on their website. So it's the administrator user is admin, and the initial password is zero shell. So the first reflex would be to try it. So if we do, we see that it will work, hopefully. Yes. So what can we do at this stage? Anything interesting we can do? Yes, we can see users maybe, or logs, because it turns out that logs can be quite interesting. I don't know, it happens to me a lot. I'm entering my username, I hit tab, and I enter my password, but it turns out I didn't hit tab, and I've written the password next to my username as the username, and now it's logged as a failed login attempt, so you can see the password. Anything related to logs, that's the not sexy and boring part of our job, but logs will give you some information, what has been done earlier, maybe the IP address of the admin if you want to hit a particular IP address, how do you choose which one to start with, things like that. So I realize all this might not be interesting, so I have a 0-day for you, right from Turkey. It won't be much of use. It's a local Wi-Fi hotspot manufacturer. They have an SQL injection in their login screen as well. So we have to remember that most network solutions are old, as far as I can see, and they most probably have the very basic vulnerabilities that you would not expect to see. So SQL injection, what cross-site scripting, it's difficult to explain to the customer, so at this stage it's not very interesting, but local file inclusion, directory traversals could be interesting. So as I said, most of my customers are well protected or have invested in security in somehow. So network access control is one of the problems or pains in the neck we have to bypass, which seems to be rather easy. You just need 2 tools, which both come installed in Kali Linux. So the initial reflex would be to just listen to the network with Wireshark to see who is allowed, because you are not allowed to communicate on the network because there's network access control, so you cannot access the network. But you can receive broadcast messages that were sent. And it turns out if you can locate printers or IP phones, these are usually the best MAC addresses to spoof. If you want to spoof a MAC address, printers are usually easy. You can, once you find a MAC address on the traffic to see if it's a printer or if it's a laptop or if it's a server, you can always use sites like macvendors.com to see which vendor the MAC address belongs to. This is from a Nessus scan. Everyone is using Nessus, yeah? And we usually get this. So for some time, unless there was something critical or something we could do with it, we reported saying that, okay, we have the default community name. Until we decided to report it using something like Spiceworks to show the customer that, more graphically the data we could extract. So this has changed a bit the perception of the report from the board's perspective, from C-level, as you might say. So I had customers showing this page to their CISO saying, oh, look, these guys, they have seen everything on the network. Well, we didn't see anything, but it looks good and it has charts, so they like it. And obviously phones, because phones are usually easy to miss, and we sometimes forget them. Do we have any young colleagues who are just starting in InfoSec, or no? Everyone is veteran? Great. So if you are new into this, there's this VoIP. It's called, it's a vulnerable voice over IP server. You can just play with it. It's Asterix. So let's go over that. The problem with voice over IP is, again, they are easy to miss. For example, if I should scan my network, I would probably not scan for UDP ports. Yeah, it won't come as first reflex. So since I don't scan for UDP ports, I will not. Who scans for UDP ports at each engagement? You do? Wow, good. But still not all the hands, just to be clear on that. So the first thing to do would be to find SAID VoIP or voice over IP thing. So again, Nmap here we have to use it. And let's say I'm scanning for UDP, and let's not lose too much time with this port, and I'll scan my own network. See if I do have anything. So what seems the problem? Any ideas? You know, we have very cool camera stickers, and I can offer one to the person, gentleman or lady, who can answer the question. I asked Nmap to show me only open ports, and it has also shown me filtered ports. How come? Yeah, great. Because it's UDP, so it doesn't have three-way handshake. It cannot tell the difference. It just sends the packet, and if it doesn't get anything back, it says, okay, it can be open, it can be filtered. You figure out. The sticker is in my bag. I'll just hand it. Remind me, don't forget to remind me the sticker. So once I can figure out where the VoIP is, well, then I can start working. But hopefully we have better tools than try to guess with Nmap. So we can use something called SVMap that would also scan the network. But in this case, it would be more VoIP specific. So it would give me a nice report telling me that, okay, these are, hopefully now, the IPs. Okay. So this is a much better or much cleaner result. And I can see that here I do, in fact, have something. So I could just keep on digging until, you know, I come up with, I learned that it's an asterisk, and well, it has a vulnerability, a known vulnerability that would allow me to, I'll just copy and paste that, be much easier. Okay. Bless you. So this is, as you can see, a regular Metasploit module, an exploit, and all you have to do is just key in the IP address of the target, which we found here, hopefully, yeah. And I think we should be good to go. Let's see. Oh, yeah, he's right. Just because he will brute force the extension, so if I let him do that, he will keep on going. I can just put in the extension I want. Oops, again too much. Yes, that should do it. No? Okay, third time's the charm. Nope. Just let me. Oh, N is missing. Yeah, I've noticed the extension. Yeah, the sticker for you. Okay. Okay. Now I have finally the command shell. So it's basically a shell because, in fact, VoIP is running on a Linux. So it's like most of the enterprise IoTs you will see, it's Unix-ish. So like the printers or any other systems out there, it has some flavor of Linux in it. So I could just go around in the directory and see if I can find anything interesting. Like so, a config file that would hopefully contain some passwords. Let me know. Yeah. And the second step, I could use this hard-coded password or the password from the config file to connect directly to the server and manage it like the normal IT guy would do. So just not to go over my time. The phones themselves, this is a whole different issue. On some phone models, just not to give you any ideas, we could extract hard-coded passwords from memory. So memory dump works perfectly fine on these things. And probably the sexiest thing as far as sea level is concerned are cameras. So if you can get a camera, again, this we used to put them in our reports like this, saying that, okay, you are using default credentials, be careful, someone might start to watch you. It didn't impress anyone until we decided to include screenshots from the camera. So it has changed a bit the way our reports are perceived. So what do we need? This is research that nobody really cares to lose time with because we have much sexier topics. But it could be a base for reflection. And basically, you will be facing two kind of targets: web applications that would have directory traversal, SQL injection, and all the jazz. Or Unix flavors that could have a kernel vulnerability or a memory flow somewhere. Just, you need to brush up on a few basic things that we might have forgotten about. Command injection in Linuxes, it's something we forgot. Local file inclusion, again, very seldom you will see that in a proper web application, but as far as printer interfaces are concerned, we still see them a lot. So this is about it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Anyone, I promised stickers, they just find me. And the Turkish delights are outside. Thank you.